Welcome, Internet, to the PixelPlay Podcast, your weekly podcast where we get together to talk about everything going on in video games. This week, we're talking about one thing and one thing only, and that is PlayStation Showcase 2023. We're going to be talking about some of our favorites, things that we saw, some of the things that concerned us, overall thoughts, and the implications for the larger gaming environment. I am one of your hosts, Kaylan, aka Catastrophe, joined as always by my co-hosts, Adam, CS Radical, and Chris at Jin and Chris. Gentlemen, how are we doing today?
Fantastic. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks. I beat Star Wars Survivor.
Yes, I wanted to ask. I needed
so
to know.
good. So good.
Oh,
I
yeah.
loved it. Such a good game. I'm kind of sad that it's over. I was going to go for the platinum, and then I looked at the list. I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. Forget that.
Yeah, that's what happened to me.
Yeah.
I got all but like 2 of them, and then I was like, oh, these are ridiculous. I don't want to do that.
I've talked about it before, and you could go look back at our other episodes of like how trophies are like being ruined. Like the worst trophy is the whole collect everything, and I hate that trophy, and it's just ruined that. I would have gotten the platinum if it wasn't for that one trophy. But yeah. So now I'm kind of in a state where I don't know what to play. I went to the library, and I'm currently rented Switch games, guys. That's the state that we're in right now. I got Advanced Wars, which is awesome.
Yeah,
and it's really good. And Metroid Prime, which I don't know, I got like just through like the introductory tutorial, and it just, I don't know, like I know that game was getting like really high praise, and I don't quite see it yet, so we'll have to see how that turns out. But
did you play the original?
No.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if this was you didn't like the remaster or just
no. This is the only Metroid game I've ever played was the Metroid, like Super Metroid, and that was with the retro console when it came out. That's the only experience I have with it. But so far, seems kind of like, doesn't seem bad. It's fine, but it doesn't seem compelling. Like I don't get where the 10 is. So yeah. Adam, what about you? What's new with you this week?
I finally finished the first Trails in the Sky, so I am now 1 of 3 through that arc, and now I'm into the second game. Even without voice acting, and well, there is a little bit of voice acting, but it's mostly like slight lines that are done after every battle. That's the only real dialogue ever in the game. For a game, though, that doesn't really have any dialogue and it's all text, I forgot that those games are capable of actually getting some emotional reactions, because the end is really fucking well told. And I even knew what was already happening because, you know, obviously playing Cold Steel and they cross over with all these older games, I did a bunch of research on the story because I never thought I was going to play the older games. So I needed to know as much as I could so I at least would understand some of the shit. And now that I knew going in, even with the information in front of me, I still look at them like, man, they did a great job emotionally telling that story at the end. And now, like, the beginning of the second game has started, and it goes right away with the smacking you in the face with emotional stuff again. I'm like, oh, yeah. All right. Yeah, I remember with Cold Steel how I got pretty welled up, and we're already starting on that front, and we're only starting the second of 3, and I'm not even going into the other arcs still, so there's plenty of time. And of course, there's a new game in July, assuming it doesn't get delayed at this point. So my brain is like, great, we're just going to be on emotional damage level for the next like few months as I play through most of these games again.
Speaking of new game, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. No, I just need to know, how long did it take you to play the first one?
Somewhere around like 20-ish, I want to say.
Okay, that's not bad. I was hoping.
Now, granted, I usually had turbo mode on the entire time, so that way it would go a lot faster. I didn't realize, because normally you just hold down the right trigger to go turbo. I didn't realize, because I've never tried to before, Steam has its own controller settings you can do, so I could actually toggle the thing to be a release and go now, so that actually makes things so much easier, because I was losing the feeling in my index finger from holding it the entire game and then like thumbing the X button every time I want to do anything. I'm like, this is ridiculous. How is this not a toggle option? And then Steam was like, yo fam, we got you. I'm like, thanks. My hands appreciate you.
Steam knows what's up.
Chris, were you intending to do a Jingle All the Way reference, or did it just work out that way?
As soon as he said turbo, I'm like, it's Jingle All the Way time. Like, I was ready.
Yeah.
Well, we're showing our age quite well, aren't we?
It's a brand new movie. It just came out last week.
So yeah, good.
Apart from that, I guess we're in that state of trying to figure out what the heck the next thing is, because obviously, I mean, I'm sure, Chris, before we get to the main stuff, you have stuff to talk about. But yeah, that's kind of in my state. It's like, okay, I'm playing old stuff until something else happens, and we'll talk about the something in a minute.
Something new to play. It's transition. That's a good way. Chris, you had your chance. You passed over to me, so we're gonna. No, I'm just kidding. What have you been up to? What have you been playing?
Well, actually, I normally have more to say, but I've just been playing Tears of the Kingdom, and we're both like, "What should I play?" Like, clearly, it's Tears of the Kingdom. Like, it is so good. Like, I'm only maybe 11 or 12 hours in. Like, I haven't had anywhere near as much time as I want with it yet, just because of actual real life, I guess. And I've already completed 2 major dungeons. Like, the amount of dungeons and story that's happened in only 12 hours, it's like an old school 3D Zelda game put in an open world environment with like shrines and stuff everywhere. It's I can't put like when I played Breath of the Wild, I don't even think I'd gotten to the first dungeon yet. Like, and I'm already
There's
done
only
2
4.
of many.
There was only
In
4 in the
Breath
last
of the
game.
Wild, yeah. This one apparently has a lot more. I haven't explored the Sky World or the Underworld area really yet. And I'm 2 dungeons in. So this is remarkably so much more interesting than Breath of the Wild. And also, I'm glad this game actually came out when it did. Because the main world is still like the same Hyrule, they didn't change it because obviously it's a direct sequel. I'm actually at the point where I get to a place and I'm like, oh yeah, you. Like, I completely forgot about most of it. So I'm glad it took them like, what is it, 6, 7 years? I don't know. I'm glad it took that long because if this came out like 2 years after Breath of the Wild, I've been like, oh, I've already been here. I already did this. This is annoying. I'm rediscovering everything, and I like that. So,
Cool.
really, really, really good, fun game that's extremely addicting. I'm still, even with the 2 dungeon stuff, I'm like, oh, there's a tower to go to. There's a shrine. Oh, there's another shrine. Oh, there's like a crop circle thing in the ground, which is like a thing you can find. Oh, there's one. I want to go to that. Because everything gives you a reward that either increases your inventory, your health, your stamina, or gives you a video memory that helps unlock a mystery of something that's going on in the story. Because it happened a little bit in the past. So it's kind of like these memories you find, which are oh so good because it's like, oh damn.
Well, that's good to know because I felt like the thing with Breath of the Wild is it didn't really reward exploration. It's like, oh, cool, you got another stick. Like, cool.
Yeah.
And that, like, I felt for me like there was no loop. It was just go explore for the sake of exploring.
That was kind of the big thing with me that kind of got me out of it. Apart from just how unnecessarily large the world was, every time you go in, like, oh, there's this little like fort here with a chest. What's in it? Oh, it's a stick that's gonna break in 15 hits.
It's a rusty
that's
sword.
great.
Yeah. No, in this one, there's just they're throwing so many weapons at you. Every enemy drops a weapon. It's always increasing, like better than the thing you have, and it's more about okay, I can only hold 10 weapons right now. This one is this good. Which one do I drop to pick this one up? Like it's just constant so far that. And the going around the world is so much better because the towers that you get that unlock the map, kind of Assassin's Creed style, you don't have to climb them. You just have to figure out how to open the door to them, and there's like a very small puzzle to do it. Once you get there, it launches you up in the air. You use your like Nintendo Switch peripheral that basically is so funny because every Zelda game has like the Game Boy Advance that Link has. Like it's always very meta like that. But you scan the world using the Switch and it then fills out the map. But every time now you go to that tower, which is also a fast travel point, you can stand on it and it launches you straight up into the air, like high into like the sky world area. And then you can just, as long as you have enough stamina, you can just paraglide your way to basically anywhere on the map. So they've figured out as long as you get to some of those, like I'm just basically unlocking a tower up in the air and like glide myself to the next tower until I see a shrine. I'm like, ooh, shrine. And I get distracted and I go. Or I see one of those, the crop circle looking things that's a symbol on the ground where you can unlock the memory by finding the special item in the crop circle. I know it sounds silly, but again, it's they've fixed everything wrong with Breath of the Wild, in my opinion. I'm sure people would still like not like certain things, but man, is it way more addicting and like that boring part of Breath of the Wild is just gone. Like maybe the first hour, maybe if you're on the tutorial island. Also, you can just jump off the island and go right into the game if you don't care. Like they just give you whatever you want to do, go ahead. You don't want to go to the first city or village? Don't go. Just don't go. Just go do everything else. It doesn't matter.
Cool.
Yeah.
Guys, let's just jump into this week's topic. There's basically one topic, and that is the PlayStation Showcase. I thought we can kind of go over it, give our thoughts, give our feelings of like what we thought of the conference as a whole, individual games, talk about like larger implications for Sony and for Xbox and gaming as a whole. So let's just start real like 10,000 foot view. Overall, what did you think of the conference? You give it a score. Was it good? I don't like just your initial thoughts. Like, we're not going to go into specifics. We'll do that in a second. But like, what was your overall impression of the conference?
This did not need to be labeled as a showcase. I did actual math after I put all my grades for each individual game, and it was a C+. So this is my personal grades. If I was being more generous, it's probably somewhere around a B- to a B. And that's okay for a state of play. And especially when most of the games that were at the showcase were not first party. And especially because a lot of the major ones are not Sony exclusive. There was definitely a feeling, if you're a Sony pony, you felt pretty left out of this. If you're like just a gamer who has like most of the like if you're like me and you can game on your PC, you have an Xbox, you have a PlayStation, you're looking at this list being like, yeah, there's a bunch of cool stuff here. But Sony itself, you're like, okay, Spider-Man, cool. Spider-Man. So yeah, like
Chris,
it was a C+ for me overall, but like it's not good enough for a Sony showcase. This was a state of play plus.
Okay.
Ooh, I like
Chris,
that.
what about you?
I feel pretty close to the same. I would give it my rating in my head was like a 7 out of 10. So Adam's C+ or B-, pretty much spot on. And it's not that it was bad in the sense like I saw stuff, I was like, oh, there's nothing there. It just didn't have that E3 flair of like, oh, here's those big 3 announcements that I had no idea was coming. Or maybe there was like rumors on Reddit like 2 days ago because it accidentally got leaked. Like there was just no big moment for me. It was more like I either saw some stuff I already knew about, but just got a little bit of a better look at it. Or there was a bunch of non-Sony stuff. So again, like cool, but didn't feel that Sony like, damn, what a year to have a PS5 over blank,
Yeah, I think a key piece of this is less what was shown, but what was missing, because there's so many things that we thought might be there and weren't. Even some of the obvious things that we thought were going to be there weren't there.
Yeah. I think for me, like, I don't think this was a bad conference.
No.
In the sense of like, from a game conference thing, like what we typically see at EC, this is like mid-level. This isn't anything bad. This isn't a bad conference by any stretch of the imagination. But for a Sony conference, this was bad. So like, this is up there with like a Ubisoft and Activision. Like, okay, there's something there for everyone.
Almost feels like a summer game fest, but Sony put it on.
Yeah, like it's not bad, but it's just not what we come to expect from Sony. And for me, there's actually some larger concerns I have that this is sort of a harbinger of what's to come for Sony. And I think that this is like the first misstep or the canary in the coal mine of like what a larger problem is looming for Sony. And we can talk about that in a second. But yeah, like it's not a bad conference. It's a bad PlayStation showcase. Like if this had been Microsoft, we would be like applauding them for like, great job. Like you totally knocked it out of the park. But for Sony, we come to expect more. So that being said, let's jump into some of the specifics. Like, what are some things that we saw that we liked? What are some things that we saw that we were concerned about? And Adam, you kind of mentioned things that were like missing. So like, let's kind of go around the table. Let's pick a couple. We'll go around one at a time. Chris, I'll start with you this time. What's like something that you saw that you liked? What were some of the games that kind of hit for you?
Obviously, it was nice seeing more Spider-Man because I realized that game is probably coming out this year, and we've known that for a bit. Yeah, and I mean, besides like a teaser trailer that had Venom like last year or the year before, like no info. Like I knew really nothing about it. So to actually see the gameplay and see everything, that was nice. But also expected. Like I wouldn't have expected that to be a big thing, or at least I would have figured that would have been like kind of the start leading into something else big. Just because again, it's not an announcement; it's more a like bigger look into it. And Assassin's Creed, I would say that just because even though it's not a Sony exclusive or anything like that, it looks like the original like Assassin's Creed games if they got obviously a makeover to look like a more modern game.
It's how I remember Assassin's Creed looking like at the time. It's not how it was at the time. Like going back and you look, it's whoa. But when I think of back of like 2007 playing Assassin's Creed, that's what it looks like to me.
Yeah, same. It's got me hopefully optimistic about a series that I have been still buying into, regrettably, because I haven't really like loved the last.
I have a problem too, buddy.
Yeah,
We're in
like
good company. I've got a problem too.
I like parts, but then I don't. I'm like, it reminds me that I'm not playing as even as an assassin in Assassin's Creed. Like I'm this side character as the assassins are doing their thing, and I'm just some other person on their own personal quest that just
Yeah.
happens to bump into an assassin a couple times. It's like I get it, but like, why isn't the Viking an assassin? Why not just make him one? Like, why? Um, I'd say those are my two big ones, and I know that I don't want to say too many because I know that you guys have probably some similar ones. But I do have one that I don't think either of you would maybe bring up. You might, but what was it called? Sea of Swords, Sword of the Sea.
Sort
There
of
we
the
go.
sea.
Yeah, the sort of Journey looking game.
It's not just Journey looking. It's made by
Journey.
It's made by Journey, and
Yeah.
it is Journey on a sword. So it kind of looked like. I mean, I loved Journey. I've beat that game and platinum it back on the PS3. I got it on Steam the day it showed up. I'm gonna replay it on PS5 because I guess they upgraded it to like a PS4 version, and I have it again. But I just thought, okay, this looks exactly like the Journey aesthetic. It almost looks like a spiritual successor, and I really like the sword as like a surfboard over the sand kind of thing. And you're kind of unlocking the sand and making it water again. No idea what actually is happening, but I mean, and that's the beauty of those games. It kind of leaves a lot up to your imagination. Even when you finish Journey, you're like, wow, that was beautiful. I still don't even fully understand what just happened, but this is what I think it is, and that breaks my heart, or something like that. Like, so this looks very, very cool. Very pleasing to the eye, and also I imagine it'll probably be like a 10 to 15 hour game at most. So that will also be nice because
Will
I
probably
have,
make you cry.
and I'll cry. Like I'm not gonna even hide it. When I beat Journey, I had like a couple man tears coming down my face, and I didn't even understand them because I didn't even fully understand what happened in the game. The ending just moved me, and I had ideas of what it could be, and yeah, definitely had like the odd tear. So yeah, I would say Sword of the Sea is probably one of the bigger ones there, like not bigger ones there, but one of the ones that I'm very anticipating, just because it won't be too expensive to pick up. It won't be a huge game that's going to take like 70 hours. It'll be a really nice game that I'll have very fond memories of that will probably show up between other games that are coming out. So Sword of the Sea is definitely up there for me.
Cool. Adam, what about you? What are some of the ones that stood out for you that you're excited for that you showed up that showed well?
Apart from obviously Spider-Man, which, you know, we might talk a little bit deeper into later, but the big ones for me as a Bungie fan was both of what they put out there, and this one being Marathon, which, even though we don't know anything about it, like I know what the 1994 release I think looked like, so I have a rough idea of what to expect, but just the vibe of it, you know, having that very like cyberpunk meets like sort of sci-fi level, like cool aesthetic that it has, knowing that it's going to be like some sort of first person shooter, and because it's Bungie, and you know Bungie does that shit perfectly, and just vibes that I get from it are really, really good. And I've seen, like I said, I've seen footage of what their original version of this was back in the old MS-DOS, you know, PC days, and I'm just excited to see what they do with something that isn't Halo and isn't Destiny when they go back to what I assume is their roots. I'm hoping that this isn't, you know, just like some games as a service level multiplayer game. If it is, I'm going to be a little bit annoyed, but I'd still be willing to give it a shot because I at least know that if it's Bungie behind it, it's going to at least be fun to play, which is still pretty important. But, you know, if it ends up being some really cool single player idea again, I'd be super into that, but I have a sense that it's probably going to end up being something more multiplayer. But that itself, like, that got my attention. And then Destiny 2 with the final shape. I've checked out of Destiny since its last expansion. I got burnt out again. And they really tugged on the heartstrings on this one because obviously for those who have never played Destiny before, Lance Reddick, who recently passed away, he is one of the major characters in the arc that's going on. He's basically like one of the three leaders of the three classes you get to pick from. And obviously he passed. And Nathan Fillion was brought back, whose character was killed off a few expansions ago as a part of this. And people are theorizing whether or not it was intended to be this way. I personally go with the idea that because Lance Reddick passed, that this was their way of A, honoring him, and B, having something else to throw at the fans and be like, hey, we're going to pony up here to get Nathan back on staff here so that we can, because this is apparently the final expansion of Destiny 2. and might be wrapping up the entire story from what I understand. So it's also a way to kind of give the fans like, okay, this is our way of sending him off and also sending the franchise off if that's what actually ends up happening. So
I can't imagine because he passed away like not too long ago. Like
there's probably going to be some stuff that was worked on, but I have a feeling they'll have to find some way to either write him out or kind of like push him to the side so that way anything that was missed with him doesn't end up coming up. And I imagine that's a big part of why Nathan Fillion was brought in, because they might need somebody to fill in the gap, and just bringing in another voice actor isn't going to cut it, and bringing in anybody, especially if they killed him off, like if they still go with that route, whatever, but especially if the idea is to push him to the side for whatever reason, they can't just have like random person show up. So the only person that honestly fits is Nathan Fillion because he's the only one that's really left. So for him to come back is a pretty big deal, and for someone like me who started from the very beginning, to see him back as Kate 6 did almost bring a tear to my eye watching that live. So I mean, apart from that, I mean, to flip on with, or to add on to what Chris said with Assassin's Creed Mirage, I honestly still have no care about this game until I see reviews. But to see Shohreh Aghdashloo, which obviously Chris will know from The Expanse, as the narrator for this, I'm like, fuck you, Ubisoft. Don't do that. That's cheating.
She's playing, I think, the head of the Assassin's Guild in the area.
Yeah, that's cheating.
She's like a major character in it. And she's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
She's perfect.
She's got the voice for it.
Yeah.
Well, other than that, I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about more, but I'll give you a chance to kind of hop in with a couple.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, you guys are kind of touching on some of the ones that I agree on. Like, I'm super excited for Spider-Man, obviously. I'm excited for Assassin's Creed. The other big announcement that kind of got me was Metal Gear Solid Delta, the Metal Gear Solid 3 remake, remaster, whatever.
That wasn't a tremendous reveal. Like, that's probably like the one good surprise reveal that we saw, because the way that trailer was designed was perfect.
Yeah. I've never played the Metal Gear games. I played Metal Gear Solid 4, completely lost. I played 5 halfway and quit. But this one I'm like very excited to give it a solid try, and I feel like it might be the one for me. Similarly with like the 1, 2, and 3. Sorry,
solid
what were you saying, Chris?
I was just laughing that you said solid try.
It's not intentional. I'm gonna give like the remaster when that comes out this fall. I might give that a try too and see.
Yeah, I'm curious about the originals getting remastered as well, just to give them a fair shake again, because obviously I haven't played those in forever either. I don't think I've actually even started the third one ever, so I've only tried bits and pieces of 1 and 2.
Yeah. Other than that, the other ones that kind of stood out to me, Helldivers 2. I got really sucked into Helldivers when that one came to PlayStation Plus.
What do you think about them changing from twin stick to third person?
Love it. It looks so good. And I think that'll make it more of a broad appeal to a wider audience. I think the asymmetric,
especially like it being like a co-op Starship Troopers. That looks so much fun.
Oh, did you ever play the first one?
No, I never actually did. I think I have it on my console because I think it was free 1 month, but I never tried it because I didn't have anybody to play it with.
It's very much Starship Troopers, that kind of sarcastic, like, for like democracy and stuff like that. Like,
well, the trailer kind of gave it away with that weird like PowerPoint presentation level.
That's
trailer
100% the vibe of Helldivers. But like, this was such a fun game that I remember playing it with my wife and like 2 friends online, and it was just so much fun because you would just go around and do like have command of like do different missions and stuff, and it was just such a fun gameplay loop. Very accessible, but like also had like the stupidity or like situations that were funny. So like, one of the key things with the game is that like you can die and kill your other partners with you. So if you throw a grenade and they're beside the grenade, they blow up and die. Or like if you have a laser gun that just cuts through anything, it cuts through anything, including like your own players. Or like if you do like a command to like have a drop like a mech suit, it could drop on your players. And it was just, we had so much fun with the chaos of just like people getting crushed and killed and everything like that. It was so much fun. So
this gives me the vibes of what we were thinking like with a game like Second Extinction was going to be, but this looks like a more polished version of this.
Yeah, way more polished.
So Helldivers 1, and then one that I'm like cautiously interested in is Phantom Blade 0. Never played, like I've never heard of this game before. It's got a cool aesthetic. If it leans more towards like the God of War vibe versus the Dark Souls vibe, I think I'm going to be into it. I played Elden Ring and I liked it, but I don't know if I love that style of game all the time. And so if it's got more of that God of War quick, fast reaction, which is the impression I get, then I'm on board for this one.
Did anyone get the sense that trailer felt sped up? Because honestly, with the combat, it almost felt too fast. I was wondering, because when I was watching, I'm thinking, did they like speed it up just a little bit so that way they could fit it in the time slot that they were given? Because the combat seemed like it was way too jumpy, way too quick. Like I felt like, no, this is like only like 12-year-olds are going to be able to play this because they're going to be the only ones capable of keeping up with it. Because otherwise, like the trailer looked amazing. Like the visual design, the aesthetic that it has, like being this sort of like, I guess it's like a Soulsborne samurai, but it also still has a bit more of like elegance and like brightness to it, whereas generally a lot of more Soulsborne games tend to be a lot more dreary and dark, whereas this one has a bit more of like the aesthetically pleasing visuals to it to add on to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is attractive to look at versus Souls games where they're just very bleak and you're gonna die.
Yeah.
Like originally I was thinking, oh god, this is gonna be Soulsborne, and then for the further into the gameplay, I'm like, no, this might be more like maybe Devil May Cry-ish. It's like it's not nearly into like you're gonna get your ass kicked, because with how many enemies are on the same screen, I'm like, no, this isn't gonna be super hard. It might still be challenging, but like it's still more of a sense of you're gonna be able to at least accomplish stuff rather than any enemy is gonna kill you with like 3 hits.
Yeah. So this one, I'm just like, it's got my attention. I'll see where it lands, but so far, like it looks cool and looks like a neat idea. So, and then, I'm sorry, go ahead. No,
I was
please.
just gonna say, I think you nailed it perfectly by hoping it's a God of War like, because I didn't want it to be a Souls like game, but I couldn't think of what I thought it might be like, and if I think God of War is the perfect analogy of what this game could be like, and hopefully is like, because that's when I would pick it up.
Because if it is a Soulsborne, it's dead on arrival, because there's been too many, even with this aesthetic alone, there's already too many that do that.
Well, that's the thing. I think a lot of people saw it, and it immediately just screams like Dark Souls clone. And I think by going with the Dark Souls aesthetic of like the dark, gritty kind of Warhammer-esque kind of like look to it, and I mean not Warhammer like the space aspect, but just that, you know what I mean, like the over-designed darkness, grim, kind of everything's destroyed and
it gets people's attention because it's popular. But then by the end of the trailer, you watch the combat and you go, no, it's not quite that. So it actually got my attention by the end, because I'm thinking, okay, this looks like something I won't quit after an hour because I can't do anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Other than that, the only other one that's kind of like mid, and we can talk about it after we talk about the games, was the release of Project Q. So we can talk about that once we go through the games. We'll save that as kind of like a little touch.
Why don't we save that for once we're done saying nice things about this showcase?
I'm done. Like that. Those were the games that kind of stood out. Other than like what we've already mentioned. Like this is not to say those are the only 2 games. Those are the only 2 that have not been mentioned yet that I'm kind of interested in. So we could talk a little bit about the other side stuff that we saw that was kind of like, ooh, got us concerned. So,
well, I want to just touch on a couple more things, because I thought we were going to go back and forth. I didn't want to like dump 10 things I liked. You know, there were a few like indie things that I thought were really interesting. I think, well, Cat Quest, I'm already super on board with, and I've heard so many good things about it, and I've still got to get around to trying it. Revenant Hill, for anyone who's played Night in the Woods, which was on Game Pass for a while, and that aesthetic, like that's got my attention because that studio has done very tremendous work. I'm just scrolling through the list. Oh yeah, Grand Blue Fantasy Relink is me crossing my fingers, because that game's been in development forever as a Japanese like third-person hack and slash that's based on the I guess it's a gacha game to start, but it's also an anime and many other things. It's had a bunch of stuff over the years. But that was the one that I was the most excited about, because the initial trailer they dropped for it looked amazing. It looked like exactly what I said, you know, graphics might be becoming in the future, which is anime on screen. And now that I'm seeing it again, it's not nearly as polished, but I think that's also because once you get the concept trailer out, now it has to start looking a little more realistic with what they can push out with a full game rather than a tech demo. And then aside from that, I mean, there's a lot of meh things, but to be honest, like, it may not be a lot of first-person stuff, but what they revealed as their little PSVR 2 lineup, I thought was pretty decent. Like, everything that they showed there, I thought was really, really good. I mean, I don't care about Five Nights at Freddy's, but people are going to get in the door. Hey, shut up and let me finish there, you friggin' PSVR 2 hater.
Don't get the point.
But I mean, like, if you're into Five Nights at Freddy's, you're interested. Resident Evil VR or Resident Evil 4 VR, that's a given. Arizona Sunshine without seeing gameplay, but I know what it's going to be about. But the trailer was really fun. I think that's going to be a nice little game to play. Crossfire Sierra Squad, if that ends up being a really solid FPS game for VR2, that's a big plus. And then Synapse, that's kind of like a bridge between like Superhot and had a bit of like Returnal vibes to it. I think that's a really cool idea as well. So I thought they had some pretty interesting stuff. I'm not going to talk about Beat Saber because that doesn't count. I don't think a DLC trailer for Queen deserves to be a part of a showcase, but you know.
So this is interesting because you're of the mind that they did a good presentation of PlayStation VR.
Okay, if you want to talk about first party shit, then no, but I'm saying in terms of stuff that's coming to it, I think that's cool. I think they have a pretty decent set of stuff.
See, I disagree. Like, you're trying to sell me on a PSVR for arguably more than a PS5, and like the best games, like they're like you said, one is a DLC, and then like one is just a mode for a game that we already have. And like, no offense, if I'm going to play Resident Evil 4, I'm going to play it as a first-person shooter, like the way, like that's the way it's supposed to be played, in the sense like that's the best way to experience, in my opinion. Like, there's nothing here that was like, oh man, I need to go out and buy a VR tomorrow. Like,
I'm getting to the point though that I'm starting to wonder with people that aren't interested in this if there's any game that can get you in, because let's be honest here, we're not at a point that I don't think you're going to get a game that's actually that transformative to the medium, because it's too risky to put that much money into a game with that level. Like Horizon was a big whiff by Sony, and whether it works or not, we'll see in the future. But like, I don't know what you expect to see on the VR2 that suddenly like creates this massive generation of system cells, because it doesn't really exist. Like, we're still in this age where it's still sort of a gimmick, right? And there's not really a company out there that's going to push something so intense that it's going to make everybody want to get into it.
Well, I think the problem is that like you said, the games that we have feel very gimmicky in the sense like I don't know, it doesn't have, like, I'm not saying it needs to be AAA like level of like Last of Us Part 2 or something like that, but you're asking me to pay a premium price. Like, you're asking me to pay.
You may not be the target though. Like, for the people that are interested in this level stuff, that's what I'm looking at. In the same, like, I don't give a shit about like 70% of what's in this lineup here, but for the people that I think it's for, I think it actually does a lot. Like, if you already own a VR2, you got some pretty cool stuff coming your way. If you're on the fence and you have the money to go spend on this massive gimmick, that's probably a couple of things that can push you over the edge and kind of make you go, all right, those are pretty cool. I might take a look at that. But like,
fair enough.
If you're an Arcam where I sure as shit can't afford $600-700 right now on a VR peripheral, no, this isn't doing it for me. But that looks cool, and if I had the money, I would totally be interested in this. But can't.
See, I'm in the opposite camp where it's like, if I could get one if I wanted to, but it's like nothing has been shown to me yet where it's like, oh, I need to drop the amount of cash that you're asking for these experiences. Like, they seem very gimmicky. Like, they seem very like,
well,
they seem
yeah, and
like
I think if you're going into VR, you're already expecting that it's gimmicky. I don't think we're looking at VR still right now and thinking like it's just a given to have in your house, right? Yeah. In the same way that, like, obviously when we talk about Project Q, like, let's be honest, it's a gimmick. It's not going to get everybody's attention. I'm just trying to think if there was anything that I missed. No, I think we covered everything apart from like Immortals of Aveum, which just looks like a cool, or Aveum, I think. It looks like a cool like first-person magic game, which I'm still waiting for one that actually is good. So if this ends up being the one, cool, because I've been waiting for one for like at least 5 years to get my attention and it hasn't worked yet. So I looked at that trailer and went, okay, I guess we got another attempt at seeing if we can make first person work with anything that isn't guns.
Yeah. Chris, switching back over to you, what are some of the things that you saw that you like were concerning, or that you didn't like, or that you think didn't show well?
So I can't think of too many games. Like, I mean, first of all, when it comes to the PSVR 2, I didn't see any Astrobot, so I was out immediately. If you're not giving me Astrobot, I don't want it. I'm not even kidding. I feel that's actually like my favorite thing. I'm honestly
surprised that like we haven't seen anything from Team Asobi. Is it pronounced?
Yep.
So yeah, because Astrobot's amazing. I love that character, and I want him to be the like Sony mascot. You know, I think he'd be a great mascot for the system. And
it's such low hanging fruit. He's so versatile. Like, he's cute enough as his own. He looks like it fits with the PS5. And it's so versatile that you could like, hey, you got God of War coming up, put a little God of War skin on him. Like you can make avatars him. Like it's sitting right there. Take it. Like
want a guy in a costume at Pizza Hut yelling at people in a commercial like they used to do in the Banjo.
Exactly.
Banjo Kazooie. What the heck? Crash Bandicoot.
Yeah, there you go.
I want those commercials, but Astro. Yeah, things though that concerned me were more, I would say, the lack of first party stuff. So there wasn't like a game specifically I saw. I'm like, oh, this is a concerning game. It's more the lack of like first party stuff that got me a little concerned about Sony. Mm-hmm. And of course, Project Q. It doesn't concern me. I don't think it's going to like bankrupt Sony or anything like that.
It's more interesting.
It's not like if it was a Vita 2 or if it was anything where it was like, this is a console, it has cloud, so you can remote play your very heavy PS5 games on the go, but also here's things you can actually do with it on the go that aren't cloud gaming. Like it plays PSP, PS Vita games, like right off the PSN store. You can just install them and play them. Plus new games are coming. Any indie game that releases on PS5 also will release on this because it can play it. Like, I don't know, something. Then I would have been like, cool, that's a cool peripheral. They're jumping on the Switch, kind of fandom where it's like, yes, there are people who want to play some stuff on their screen and then take it to go, or just play PS5 on the go. But yeah,
it's also the laziest design. Like it literally is a PS5 controller cut in half and then a tablet stuck to it. I'm like, you guys didn't even try to do anything interesting with it.
Yeah, it looks
like what I would do with Photoshop in 10 seconds.
See, I think the design is probably one of the best parts of that. Like, because I've always looked like when the PS Vita was coming out, it was just like, man, like you were so close to, what the PS4 controller at the time was. Like it was so close, but it doesn't feel right. And even like the Switch I have, like it's so small in my hands that when I'm playing, I get like my hands get cramped. Whereas this, like, I know what a PlayStation 5 controller feels like. I just imagine a little bit bigger. This feels great. My only concern is I hope one of the things that they do is design is like put a little bit of a swivel on the screen, because like it sucks if it's flat and then you have to either look down while you're playing or like tilt it up or hold it like this.
Like, and the controller's kind of at the top of it too.
Yeah. That would be my only suggestion on that. To be honest, like I'm not sold on this yet. I'm curious as to what this looks like. I think like there's room that there might be an opportunity they can sort of build something that might allow them to improve streaming or something like that. Might be a lot of stuff that they can just do via like networking and patching and software. I don't know. But I am surprised. Like you kind of mentioned it, Chris, when you were talking, like, why is that I can't stream games like from PlayStation Plus, in the sense like, because the top tier has it that you can stream some games, right? Like it seems like a missed opportunity for this one.
Yeah. 100%. And they used to have PS Now. I don't know if they still really have that.
No, because that was merged into what we have now.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Because if you were able to just have it where if you have PS Extra and you can just cloud stream all the games that they have that are available for streaming, even if this was a cloud device, but it was actually just streaming from a library somewhere, not like remotely from your PS5, that would help a little bit. Because at least it's kind of be like attaching your phone and opening up Game Pass and doing cloud. Not the best way to play by any means, but it's a nice at least addition to have if you are commuting on a train or something. Yeah, like,
but it sounds like you can't really use it outside of your house, so it's not really that portable, is it?
No, it's just the Wii U controller. It's the Wii U controller.
If this is maybe a situation though where like we're looking at it from a North American lens. And this might be something that resonates in like somewhere like Japan or South Korea.
That would definitely be the case too, if that's being argued there. But I mean, also Jim Ryan's coming out and talking about it, so I'm sitting there being like, no, they're still trying to market this to us, but it's not really gonna work the same way unless you're like, a family of 4 with one TV. In which case, all right, so a few of you are gonna maybe get a use out of it, but
yeah, if it was I don't know US. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, like, I mean, not even just that. Like, I know, like, my PlayStation's down here, and I'd love to be able to play my games upstairs, like, in the living room or something like that. So, like, I can see it being just something I have in the house to play my PlayStation outside of my basement.
Yeah, but like, it's such a niche situation. Like, how many times on average are you going to be using that compared to just going to where the actual big screen is, right?
Yeah. I think Chris is at a good point. Like, depends on what it is. Like, I've been hearing rumors it's around 250 USD, which I think might be a little bit much for this.
Oh yeah, that's too much.
But like $150 I think would be like the sweet spot.
Yeah, if it was
Unless
like,
they have unless they have proprietary stuff that like says like, hey, we've made it to fix the latency of streaming over Wi-Fi.
I mean, the problem
Yeah.
is I don't even know if they can go that low just because of how much the controller on its own costs normally, and now they're putting a friggin' 8-inch screen attached to it. I don't think they can justify putting it that low.
It's Sony. They make screens. This is what they do.
Okay, from a business to their shareholders, they can't justify a price that low.
it's actually a
Fair
Sony
enough.
Smart TV. It's just been drilled right on there. It was refurbished anyways.
They just cut a corner off.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry,
if it
we
was
cut you off,
150
Chris. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, if it was $150, I could see myself definitely looking into this. Because right now I have like a Steam Deck and a Switch, and I do like playing them portably. It is something I like to do because again, everything I have is down here in the basement. And if I want to be on the top floor, out on my deck in the backyard, nice summer day, have a drink and sit out there, or even up in the bedroom, I have to use one of those two systems. And I did try and get the remote play from PlayStation working on the Steam Deck because it is something I'd love to do with God of War or something when it not for the main story, but when there's side quests in an open world game. Oh my God, just being able to go and sit on a couch and play it kind of on the side while you're doing something else like watching YouTube or playing podcasts or something. It does help and it is nice. But there really isn't a Sony way of doing it. Even though I tried on the Steam Deck, it's really not meant to do that, and they don't talk to each other very well. So I would be interested because it's the one system I can't play portably at all, conveniently or very well at all right now. So if this was 150 Canadian, or like very close to, I could see myself having a look and being interested.
If it was sub 300 Canadian, I think people would take a look at it. Anything higher than that, it's going to be pretty hard to sell to people.
No, because a Switch Lite is only $250, and I get that's a Switch Lite. It's not comparable, but at least you can buy indie games on it and just play them. Like you don't have to worry about streaming them from a console to the top floor where you're going to get a little bit of latency in like Celeste or something. Like that would drive me wild. It's a game that's it's all about timing, right? So I couldn't see it doing overly well at that price point. 200, 150, something like that. I could see people having a look and picking them up, picking it
I
up.
think they run a really like narrow area in that like we already have things like the cache, the backbone, the game tire. Like we have those already that I can use it through my phone, and those are like $150. Now, granted, the remote play app sucks on your phone. I actually had to buy like a third party one to get it to work properly. So like, I don't know, like there's already a market there, and the ceiling's kind of been set that like you have to justify why I have this massive, 8-inch screen. Like that's an 8-inch screen. There's still a controller to it. So we're looking at like a foot-long sub-style like console. Like this isn't really designed to be portable outside of your house. So like we'll see.
Oh, okay. Well, now that you're saying that, now I'm waiting for somebody to Photoshop a subway design on this thing.
Do it. I give the rights to whoever has Photoshop skills. Go for it.
I want that so bad. Do it.
Yeah. Other than that, was there anything else that like kind of concerned you, or anything that like you felt was missing, or stuff you saw?
I mean,
that was
it's just in general that so much was missing. I mean, look, let's take a look at. You guys you'll probably agree with me on this. So let's take a look at what the 5 biggest games in terms of name recognition or name value were. Spider-Man 2, obviously.
Done.
Metal Gear Solid Delta.
Agreed.
Final Fantasy 16.
Agreed.
Street Fighter 6.
Yeah.
And Assassin's Creed Mirage. That's probably your 5 biggest titles.
I'd
One
agree.
of those is exclusive to you. One of those is literally already out. Like, a tech demo had already come out for Street Fighter 6, so it was a trailer for a game that was literally on its way out the door, and it was for a story mode, so that was a waste of time. Final Fantasy 16 has had like 70 different trailers in the last month, so that was a waste of like 5 minutes. Square didn't bring anything else too, which is really insulting, to be honest.
It's the same trailers that are on YouTube for
like
16.
Nothing about 7 Remake? Really? Nothing? And we joked about Kingdom Hearts 4. That wasn't even there. I'm stunned by that. That they didn't even try to joke their way out of that. And then again, let's be honest, with Assassin's Creed Mirage, there's nothing about that trailer, even if there was gameplay in that trailer, that's going to make you feel any different than what you already do, because you either are interested in going back to it or you're not.
I disagree. I disagree on that one with the Assassin's Creed. I think that like,
well, what did that trailer show to get you back in then?
Confirmation, because they said, hey, we're going back to like the roots of Assassin's Creed, and like, sure, whatever, Ubisoft, I've bought your lies before. Like, I think there's a lot of people who are like, hey, I'd like this if it did work out to be this way, but like, there's a lot of
what confirmed that in the trailer though? It was just regular Assassin's Creed stuff. There wasn't anything that made you think it was different.
I think it did. Like, I think for me, like, I looked at it and it's like, okay, what do you think when you say you're going back to the roots? What do you mean, Ubisoft? Yeah. And this trailer showed, oh, this does look like Altair style Assassin's Creed. And so, like, did it show anything new? Did it give us any new information? No, but it confirmed to people like me and Chris, like, yeah, when they say they're going back to the roots, they know what we mean and what we're expecting. And this kind of shows it, right? It's kind of like when they said, hey, we're taking, we know that you guys love Assassin's Creed Black Flag. You guys love pirate games. We're building you a pirate game. And we're like, sweet, awesome. And then we got Skull and Bones. We're like, oh no, you misread exactly what we were saying. Whereas this looks like I said, this looks like Assassin's Creed that we remember from 2007.
Sure.
And so it reaffirms to us exactly what we're looking for.
But I'm not going to sit here and suddenly be like, oh, it's going to be just like Etsy all over again. I more just went, okay. No, this to me was like, PlayStation Showcase, that's just not good enough. Like this is the fact that this was top 5 most important things in here is that's the reason why I'm saying like it's such a big deal that so much was missing, because a game like this that, let's be honest, has been well past its prime, even if this is going back to its roots. The fact that Sony couldn't bring anything else is pretty... That's like where my distress is, because it's not necessarily like I think Sony's in a bad place. I'm more in the sense of like, you seriously didn't have anything else. They showed, like, I didn't even mention it before, but they finally showed us Firewalk's project, and there wasn't anything to tell us what it was. I had to go to Twitter to see that it was a first-person shooter with Concord.
Yeah.
So, like... You had Spider-Man, and that's it. Like, Metal Gear Solid isn't even exclusive to them. And Marathon, that's from Bungie, isn't either. So, like, what's Sony's thing apart from indie games? Like, this wasn't anything to make you feel as if you only own a PlayStation that you have all these cool things. Now, granted, I'm okay with that in the grand scheme of things, because I would rather as many people as possible have a chance to play a lot of these games. But, like... to think about all the things that are missing, and I jokingly said last time, I can't wait to say it when Last of Us Factions doesn't show up, and lo and behold, I was right.
This is your fault, Adam. You willed it.
Yeah. You think of what also is still missing, like nothing from Atlas, so nothing Persona related, because there's been the rumors of the remakes. No Death Stranding 2, no Stellar Blade, I think it was called, no Silent Hill, nothing from Naughty Dog, period. Like, just the amount of stuff that isn't there. You know, nothing from, what's the other, not Firewalk, but is it Fire Sprite?
Yeah.
So nothing from them. So there's just so much stuff that, like, if they show, like, let's say in, like, 3 months when they do a state of play and they show us a new game from one of these studios, we're like, you guys couldn't put together anything 3 months ago? You put out the most bare bones trailer for Concord and told us nothing about this game, and you couldn't throw anything else out there? Like, nothing, not even another cinematic I'm surprised there was no cinematic trailers for games like Wolverine or anything like that again. I'm surprised there wasn't even that. Like, again, this is what I said at the top of the show. It's a State of Play Plus because they didn't bring anything, really. Like, this feels like a State of Play for Spider-Man 2, and there just happened to be another hour of content unrelated to it.
Yeah.
100%.
I think for me, like, I'm going to kind of shift into I agree with you on most of everything. I disagree on Assassin's Creed, but like I agree with you on a lot of things in that.
I'm just super jaded from them, so it's not fine. You're okay. You're still sucker enough for them.
You have a record breakup.
You have a record of poor taste, Adam. We don't hold it against you. We expect it.
You 100% hold it against me, don't you? Why?
No, I agree with you guys on everything. Like I said, the thing that Sony needed to do coming out of or coming into this showcase was, hey, we need to know what the first parties are. We are at the point where everything, like, Sony has fired off the first volley. We saw Sucker Punch, like we saw Insomniac's game. We saw Naughty Dog's game, or no, Naughty Dog's game didn't. Yeah, they got The Last of Us, whatever. Like we don't know what's happening with a lot of studios, right? We're getting into the second half of this console, or like we're getting into the middle of this console, and we don't know what any of the first party studios are working on.
Oh yeah, there wasn't even a Ghost of Tsushima 2 thing either.
Ghost of Tsushima's missing.
Yeah.
We don't know what we don't know what Sucker Punch is working on. We don't know what Sony Santa Monica is working on. We don't know what Guerrilla is working on. We don't know what like a lot of the studios are working on. And we're now getting into the second phase of this console with no information. And this is what Sony's doing. But for me, I think there's a larger point of concern here. And this is, I kind of talked about at the beginning of the episode of like this canary in the coal mine that something's wrong at Sony. And it's my concern that Sony is kind of moving away from what made it successful. So we heard about 6 months to a year ago that Sony's going to be making more and more live service games, right? And this was an instant concern for us because Sony's bread and butter has always been these third person, maybe first person, linear story driven games. We didn't get any of those. Like Spider-Man is probably the only large AAA single player story driven game. The rest, it's like, look, we've got Concord. That's a live service game. Marathon, live service game. Going through here, like
Foam Stars definitely is.
Yeah, Foam Star, which looks like garbage, to be honest.
It looks like Splatoon and Persona had a baby. Which, don't get me wrong, sounds cool, but like I'm not playing it if it's going to be microtransaction hell.
But like a lot of these games, like Fairhaven's game, Fair Games or whatever, that's a live service. Helldivers.
That's adorable too, because that game is supposed to be anti-capitalist, and you know that's going to be riddled in microtransactions.
But it's just like Sony's came out and they're like, "Hey, we're going to make a live service game," and their showcase comes out, and we don't get anything that we're expecting in terms of first-person linear stories, and all we get is a bunch of trailers for live service games, and it's not clear to us like how do these games compare? How do they differ? Because no offense. Fair Games looks a lot like Marathon, and like all these games kind of blended into one another. That like it's just a giant mass of live service games, and it doesn't feel like Sony's doing anything innovative. Now it seems like they're chasing the trends, and that's not the Sony that I know. Sony was doing stuff that was original. Like we think back to where they started doing really well in late like 2010s to like early 2010s. They were like the trend was multiplayer games, and they're like, no, we're gonna make our own. We're gonna cut our own little corner, and we're gonna make our Uncharted's. We're gonna make our Insomniacs, like our Infamouses. Like we're gonna make our own little niche of single player games, and that's gonna be what we're doing. Now they're just following the trend, and no offense, these live service games are huge, high risk, high rewards. Most of them are gonna fail. Foam Stars is gonna come and die instantly.
That trend is also already starting to die off because people are more than aware of it now.
Well, they're also people are just getting into their camps, right? Like, you know, you're already a Destiny player. You're not going to start another live service game, right? If you're playing Fortnite, you're not going to pick up another game. Like you are now competing for the limited time that people have. And so I feel Sony did not come out and say, hey, here's what like a Sony with live services looks like. And there was nothing to reassure. It's like, hey, Sony's still here with the single party exclusives. Like we're not here with the single player exclusives. Like that's all been forgotten. And these teams are now, what are they working on? Like Naughty Dog is apparently struggling with the Last of Us factions. And the problem with these live service games is that they tie games companies up for a long time, right? You can't just release a live service game and then move on to the next project. Bungie, since Halo whatever, they've made 2 games. They've made Destiny 1 and Destiny 2 in the span of what? Since PS4 launch? Like in 2 consoles, they've made 2 games. Granted, they've been busy. They've made a lot of content. I was going to
say, to be fair, they've done tremendously well with it. So from that case, it's kind of an anomaly.
But what I'm saying though is that you have a studio where if you think about think of what Naughty Dog put out between the beginning of PlayStation 4 to PS5. Like we got, well, that's a bad example because we got 2 games. But like the idea is that you're not like Insomniac, right? Like Insomniac is making a ton of games. That's not going to be something that Insomniac can do when you have a live service game, right? It's going to be, hey, we made like Spider-Man live service. We're now going to support that for the next 2 years, or we're not. And then in that case, that game's going to dry up on the grapevine because it's a live service game that's not being supported.
And it's kind of like the point of what the arms race was initially with all the studios that have been purchased. So that way there is more people working on stuff. But even then, we didn't see what most of them were doing, which is kind of frustrating. I'm not quite in your territory yet. My guard is up, don't get me wrong. But like, because we haven't seen what a lot of these studios are doing yet. I'm not quite there, and just thinking like I said it in our Discord, not too long ago after the conference where I went. I wonder if this might just be a thing of they don't want to necessarily show everything that they know is not going to be ready for more than 12 months. So, like, who knows in the next 6 months if we get to hear a bunch more things. Like, if that's what they're doing, okay, fine. But it's going to take us, like, a year or two to realize that's what they're doing now. I mean, obviously, just communicating that with your player base would help. But let's be honest, you never do that because then the hype train doesn't happen. So they would never say that outright. But, like, if we find out in, say, 6 months when they do another presentation of some sort that we see, oh, here's Wolverine or here's X, like, sure, then I think that kind of changes the game a little bit because then at least we can start going, okay, maybe there's just going to be more consistency on the release timing of when they show these things off. And this is just like the first one that we got of this where it's just hurting because we're used to the just getting absolutely demolished with all of these trailers for big games that are going to be anywhere between 6 months to 4 years out. Because we all remember, when Bethesda had their infamous year where there was like 10 big names, but they're all like 5 years out. Where you had like in the early days of Starfield and Redfall and Elder Scrolls and all of that, and you're like, well, none of that's coming anytime soon. And I wonder, and this is just me kind of guessing as to why there was so much not there, was that they were going, hey, let's not show these things off when they're A, not even close to being done, and B, we're pretty sure this isn't coming out this year. We don't want to suddenly have our fans just thinking that all of this stuff is coming right now. But then again, I think there was at least like one or two things that I saw was 2024, unless I'm mistaken, but I'm also misremembering potentially.
Well, I think there's a larger concern, though, is that Sony's in a different situation than Bethesda is or Activision, where they're just trying to sell the games. It doesn't matter. Like, they're not fighting for any sort of flag in the ground kind of thing like Sony and Microsoft are doing. And I think Sony screwed up in the sense that now that we're getting to the point where there are Xboxes and PlayStations on the shelf and someone can willfully just go in and buy whatever one they want. The problem that they have now, and this will transition to where we're at with Xbox, is that PlayStation now has it where if someone says, hey, should I buy a PlayStation? I'd be like, yeah, there's some great games before. Okay, well, what's coming down the pipe? Factions, maybe. We don't know. Like, there's a Wolverine game that got announced
I think in all fairness, neither option has that going for them right now. But the question is, in Sony's court, like, why didn't you come out with something to at least kind of keep... Because right now, like, I think we all agree that if we were picking one over the other, it's easily Sony still. But Sony decided to take this opportunity to basically take their foot off the gas.
Yeah, well, this is the thing that I'm saying. Like, there's nothing... I can't tell anyone what the roadmap is of PlayStation. I literally don't know what any of the studios are working on. Like, it's not even where I can say. Like, the only game I know is Wolverine. And all we got was a little snippet of, like, Wolverine going, Psha! With his claws out. Like, that's the only thing that we saw. And I can't tell you what's happening in the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, like, we have, like, rumors here and there of what might be in the pipeline, but we have no confirmations. So that kind of makes it difficult. Which is to go back to what we said last week, like, Sony was starting this all off. They've really set that bar low that Microsoft can come in and just completely, like, world record high jump over this motherfucker.
If Microsoft comes out and says, hey, look at all these games we have. We have Hellblade. We have Starfield. We have, Fable. Like, imagine if Fable shows up. Perfect Dark shows up, right? And they say, hey, here's a bunch of other IP, because Xbox is in a weird position where they've got a bunch of studios and we've not heard what they're doing. Xbox is set up that they could just literally just go like full gun.
This is definitely, they have a potential to kick that door down or run face first into it like it's like Most Extreme Elimination Challenge with that one game where like there's the doors where one of them's a tarp and one of them's a straight solid piece of wood. That's Xbox right now with the getting ready for their presentation. They're either going to go right through to the finish line or just face plant so hard against that door.
Perfect
right?
analogy.
And this is the situation that Xbox is in. That, like, if they come out and they just like banger after banger after banger, and it doesn't even have to be this year. If they just say, hey, look, this year you're getting this, next year you're getting that, and then down the road in 3 years we're going to have these games. Like, there's now a roadmap that like you're investing in this console with the idea like I'm investing because I know these games are coming. PlayStation hasn't done that. What's PlayStation offering? Here's a bunch of live service games. And maybe there'll be some more games. Will there be? Probably, but we don't even know what that looks like. Because right now, all Sony's showing us is that, hey, we're all in on the live service. We've communicated nothing about where our single player story games are that you've come to expect from us. So we don't know what Sony looks like going forward. And that's because they didn't show us.
Yeah, like if Xbox comes in, especially if they have anything, like if they have like 2 or 3 titles that are like just they look good. They don't even have to be like the best looking games ever, just like they look good and fun. And they're holidays this year. Like I was thinking, like what does Sony have for the holidays? If Spider-Man comes out in say September, maybe October, there's nothing from Sony for the holidays and for obviously that lull that they have right after. Because normally there was always something in November, February, like there was always something to kind of look forward to. And if Xbox has a bunch of stuff for the Christmas time and Sony doesn't, I could see that playing in Xbox's favor. And right now we were thinking Xbox is so far behind, PlayStation is so far ahead, there's nothing to worry about. And they didn't do anything good. And they didn't really, it's not like they did anything bad. They just kind of were like, they
played
stopped
it
where they
very
were.
safe.
Yeah, they're like the tortoise and the hare, where it's like, oh, I'm the hare, I'm so good, I can just stop. And then literally Xbox, the tortoise, is now all of a sudden going to be like, actually, here's all these games, and boom, they could come up, they could catch up, they could even get ahead at a time when it was kind of like very set in Sony's favor that they couldn't not be ahead. And Xbox, I mean, will it happen? That would depend completely on Xbox's showcase.
Well, we know what we're going to be talking about next week, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
We'll be prepping for that one next week. Because I think they're the 11th, right, of June.
I thought they were around there.
Because I know Summer Game Fest is not this Thursday, but next
11th.
Thursday.
Yeah, Xbox is 11th.
So okay. So we're gonna get a chance next week to preview it as well, which is great. Like we're definitely gonna be in that like stage of like, okay, is someone gonna completely tip the scales over? Because even Ubisoft, you never know. They might come out suddenly, guns a blazing at their thing. They won't, because
Splinter Cell.
Yeah,
okay. Well, at this point, if they show Splinter Cell with gameplay, I think Kaylan already goes, yeah, Ubisoft wins. But
it's a Nintendo Switch exclusive.
No, I thought we already discussed it. It's a mobile game gotcha. Like, come on.
Mario and Splinter Cell.
Hey, Ubisoft has done it before with the Rabbids and Mario. You never know.
To be fair, it's green, so it's more like Luigi and Splinter Cell.
Oh, that would be, and it's they go to Luigi's Mansion. It's kind of a tie-in. I like it. No, it's a Mario is missing. It's a Mario is missing. It's a historical game.
Stop it.
Okay. It makes sense too, because Luigi's got to be the Splinter Cell operative to go get the kidnapped Mario. I love it when you can make Kaylan just not want to participate anymore. It's the best.
God. Like, I don't want it, but now I kind of want that to happen.
Because we're going to be previewing, obviously, next week, because there's so much stuff, because I finally put the list up. So Guerrilla Collective is the 7th. Summer Game Fest Day of the Devs is on the 8th. Wholesome Direct and Future Game Show is the 10th. PC Gaming Show and Xbox is the 11th. And then Ubisoft is the 12th. Devolver Digital is yet to throw their date in yet. But like for the major stuff, we're basically looking at the couple of days before we record. We're going to have Xbox and Ubisoft to go into. And I'm sure Summer Game Fest is going to have at least a few interesting things too. Hopefully the show is a little bit more interesting and less space horror than it was last year, but we'll see. But yeah, I think that's the key here though, in that Sony, we said last week, they're opening. You have the chance to make that bar impossible. And what is it with, because this always happens at E3 too, it seems. Whoever starts never sets the tone well. I don't know what it is, but it seems like the first person to go with these never sets a good bar. It's always like middle of the road average. It never is like a show stealer.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
For me, like going back to what Chris said about like Xbox coming up with exclusives, like the problem is that Xbox is in a situation where like they represent the best value in gaming. Like there's no dispute about that. Like get an Xbox, get a Game Pass. It's the best value in gaming. But what did PlayStation always had? PlayStation always had the exclusives. That's what you went for. In a world where PlayStation doesn't have exclusives to show, once again, I'm not saying they don't have exclusives. I'm sure they are cooking on something. But like they've just taken their foot right off the gas, like we've said. And I think that's the interesting thing. They've left it open for anyone and everyone. Like there's a possibility that Ubisoft can dunk on Sony.
They showed one major first-party game. I'm sure people will be like, well, no, this, and they're like Helldivers. I'm like, guys, be honest. They showed one major exclusive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything else is probably coming to everything else. I didn't double check every game, but most of the big hitters that I saw, they're all coming to everything.
Mhm.
Like I pre-ordered some stuff on Steam. Right when that showcase ended, I was like, perfect. Look at the stuff I'm going to buy on Steam, which is not what should have happened. That's
Yeah,
not like no.
This is the year that we're like, as you said, we're literally the midway point of this console cycle, pretty much. This is the year that we're finally like full year out of the transition from COVID, as a lot of people are finally getting back to working in their studios and everything. So many more have come off the shelves. Like there's a steady flow of consoles now. Now the real fight has begun, and they whiffed. It's not to say it was a bad stream. There was a lot of cool stuff, but potential was way higher than the value. And that's never a good sign, because you're almost never going to hit that potential bar. Like if I honestly rated based on potential of how good a lot of these games could be, it's somewhere around a B+. But when my overall rating is personally a C+, it's not a good match. Like it should be somewhere close by, because name value should almost have you at par with the potential. Instead, the name value just wasn't there. And it's not to say like there wasn't really cool stuff. Like far from it. Like we said, Helldivers, Phantom Blade. There's a lot of cool things there. But it just, the amount of stuff that was missing. Like you go back to the list that we talked about of all the things that we either wanted to see or thought was guaranteed to be there, and we got 95% of them wrong.
Yep.
That's true.
Like
Except
you'd think that we would have gotten like 3 right.
You did.
We got 1, and it was because it was the most obvious one. Actually, that's not true. I got 2 right because I said Last of Us Factions wouldn't show because I'm a genius.
Yeah, I'm looking at like the 2021 showcase, and like the games that they're showing are so much better than what we got. Or like,
and this is also during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, they didn't have one for 2022, right?
No, it's been 2
so.
years
This was also their showcase.
That's the other thing. I didn't even think to mention that.
Yeah,
I forgot about that.
It's been such a long time between like the major showcases, and they still didn't show anything. So like Xbox has the opportunity to just kick that door down, even if the games in the end aren't great. Because I mean, obviously, we thought Redfall and Starfield might be amazing at the start, and now we already know Redfall is just not good at all. And we all kind of are going into Starfield thinking it's not going to be that great either. But like Microsoft could come just absolutely just pummel you with major games, and just pummel you into submission, and we'll admit that it was a better show. The games might not end up being great in the end, but at least at that time we'll be going, man, they just overloaded their library with stuff down the road.
Yeah, it's not about necessarily them having like the best games. It's just about the hype level, and that's all they need to do.
Because, like, who knows? If we're doing this podcast 3 years from now, maybe we can look at this show and be like, you know what? Actually, Sony killed this conference in comparison. But we have no goddamn idea because time machines don't exist.
Yeah.
Yet.
It's the idea that like, this is a trailer. This is basically an advertisement. And it did not sell me to buy anything. And that's a problem. I think the other issue that it has is that it also cheapens the brand, right? Like, no offense, State of Plays have basically been diminished to noise at this point. Like I don't get excited for State of Plays anymore.
If they had called this, did they actually call it State of Play originally, or was this always promoted as a showcase?
This was always a showcase.
If they had said this was a State of Play and this is what we got, we would have been talking like, damn, that was the best State of Play they've had in years.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that like the brand of PlayStation Showcase has now been diminished, and that this is what we've gotten after 2 years, and the next one people are going to be a little bit less excited about it and a little bit less hyped, and they better knock it out of the park, because if they have a stinker after a stinker, it's going to become like what State of Plays are, where people just ignore them. Like, I personally just don't. I ignore State of Plays at this point. Like,
I want to say that that's true, but every single time there's like at least 10,000 people watching, and about half of them are expecting Bloodborne to show up, and they've been doing that for like 5 years.
Yeah,
I don't even know if that timeline's true at this point, but I'm sure it's close.
I'm just saying, like, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, it's a tarnish on the PlayStation Showcase name, which has a lot of cachet, and it has a little bit less today.
Well, we'll see in the next 2 weeks if any of the other ones actually, bring some prestige back to their names, because I don't think there's any single one of them, and we'll obviously talk about it next week, that I think like I'm absolutely looking forward to, aside from Xbox for the intrigue of their response. But like, I don't think there's a single one of these that I'm like dying to see, because I don't think any of them are going to be like amazing. And that's kind of like the disappointment too. And I think we talked about this a while ago, where we thought like maybe these shows are just inevitably going to be kind of underwhelming, because they're not going to be what they used to be anymore, because now it's going to be more of a steady flow all year long, rather than it being just all wrapped into one big package in June like it used to be.
This is what E3 died for.
That's sad.
Good.
Chris, you were going to say something?
Just the fact that, like, we've been talking how Sony didn't have any of its own first party stuff. I'm also surprised at another thing that I just thought of, because it happened today of all days, is Sony put up on Steam its wish list page for Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. They're porting another PlayStation exclusive to PC, which I know is like obviously not for the PS5 and everything, but they always were doing it, at least before, where they'd have a brief moment as just a small thing to kind of like ease everybody into the show. Like, hey, you love PlayStation exclusives? This one's now coming to PC as well. You love the Sony brand? Here's where we're expanding. They didn't even include that first party game, even though it's on a different platform, but like that is a part of their business model, this like PC side. And I'm very surprised they didn't even just like throw a little like notification at the beginning of it as kind of like a start to the show, like a simple little thing to kind of get you hyped for Sony as a brand in general, because they just put it up. I think they maybe even mentioned it on just Twitter or something. Like, it was the least amount of news when it came to like a big Sony first party game getting another re-release.
Can you imagine what our reactions are going to be in 2 weeks if Summer Game Fest has something major from Sony's side on it?
We're like, oh, that's weird. That was a weird choice.
Yeah, like we'll be happy if that happens, but we'll also be like, Sony, what the actual fuck?
Jeff Keighley paid them millions of dollars.
Maybe that's where Faction shows up. It was all these reports of them eating Bungie's help and everything was all a ruse.
Yeah,
Wolverine fighting the clickers. It's a crazy tie-in game. It's crazy.
And then Splinter Cell's gonna be there with Luigi.
Oh yeah,
I hate you guys so much.
Got to travel back in time to find Mario. He's missing, man.
Look, this is what you get for making fun of my tastes. We get back at you.
No. Ugh. Anyways, I feel like we've dogpiled enough. Is there any like closing thoughts we had on this conference? I think we've said what needs to be said.
Apart from, honestly, like, I didn't hate the showcase. I think we all kind of agree that we didn't hate it. It's just, again, like so many of these before, we were hoping for more.
Yeah.
It's like we said, it's not a bad showcase. If it was anyone else, it'd be fine. It's just,
honestly, like, I guess my only other complaint is, for a Japanese company, it was pretty dead on Japanese content. I was pretty surprised on like the amount of games out of their studios. Like, I know people are going to say, well, Capcom brought Dragon's Dogma. I'm like, guys, Dragon's Dogma is not a Japanese game. Let's be real here. That's definitely not Japanese.
But I don't think the PlayStation, especially PlayStation 5 anymore, is really targeted towards Japan.
No, but the library that they have a big like grapple on is that Japanese gaming market, like your Atlases, your NIS Americas, your Capcoms, your like a lot of those things. Like the fact that even like anime wise, the only thing we really saw was the Grand Blue Fantasy game. Like, I'm honestly, actually no, there was the one other game. What was that? Oh god, the one that looked like Genshin Impact meets like fucking Evangelion.
Oh yeah.
Now, to be fair, there is the Tokyo Game Show in September, so they may be saving that.
That's also true.
True.
Like I think that would be lost on this audience.
I'm surprised though that there wasn't like that one game, especially like Stellar Blade, where it's like, oh yeah, that's the weeb game. Like here's your giant anime titty girl. Like there you go.
Well, they had that one game, like the Genshin Impact ripoff one with like the mechs or whatever.
Yeah, I finally looked into it. That was Tower of Fantasy, which is a terrible name.
Doesn't matter. Technically, like Metal Gear technically hits that Japanese audience. Like that is a Japanese game, same as Final Fantasy.
Well, I guess I should be a little more direct. Like especially in the JRPG realm, like Final Fantasy 16, I know sort of falls into that, but like it's one of, like I said, it's like the most un-Japanese Final Fantasy we've had probably ever, because it's almost European at this point. So it almost feels like it's not even a Final Fantasy game. That's another reason why I'm kind of like unsure about that, because it doesn't even feel like one anymore.
Yeah.
Anime is Final Fantasy 16 now, Adam. Get over it. That's anime.
No, Hi-Fi Rush is like way more anime than Final Fantasy is now.
But that's an Xbox thing. They're taking over.
I know
the
Xbox
anime.
might have a stranglehold on it. They might have taken it away. Like all of a sudden, Xbox be like, "Now we've just bought Square Enix. Okay, we got that now."
Microsoft has bought the country of Japan.
Oh, and I guess my last complaint, because I forgot about this. Chris, how do we feel about an indie studio stealing away a Final Fantasy VI character for their name of their game?
Wait, which one was this?
Ultros.
Oh, Ultra. When I saw that, I did laugh. I was like, "Oh,
Ultros." We're uncultured Final Fantasy nerds, and we're like, don't tease the octopus, kids.
I am so lost on that comment, and I'm not
Good.
I don't even care to
Good.
get into it.
Kaylan's like, and with that, thank you everyone. For
Yeah. We're getting way too
yeah,
witty
like,
here.
We'll obviously see in 2 weeks, in retrospect, if, because that'll be the big thing. When we come back in 2 weeks after all the other ones, we'll actually probably sit back and like kind of rank all the major ones. I have a feeling this might actually end up turning out to be one of the better ones, just because I'm so low on everything else too, that I'm like, man, I don't even know if like Summer Game Fest I expect to be cool, but I don't think it's going to push over the edge. Xbox, I think, has a good shot at it, just on the basis of they could just overload it and be fine. I don't think Ubisoft does. So I think PlayStation has a pretty good chance to still be top 3 by the end of it, which, given the lack of content, in retrospect, is kind of sad with how everything's been these days, but maybe that's just the nature of showcases these days.
Yeah.
But hey, we'll talk about that when we preview it next week, and then obviously once everything's done, we'll then lay on blast and be like, Sony, how did you finish last? Like, I can imagine that scenario, by the way, if like even Ubisoft has a better showcase. Oh boy.
Yeah.
Well, it's because they have the tie-in with Sam Fisher and Luigi.
No, we're stopping it there. I'm not entertaining this anymore. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to hear all of our feedback on all the conferences coming up, you can catch us wherever you hear your podcast by searching for us on YouTube or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Just search for PixelPlay Podcast. We also have a whole bunch of social feeds. If you want to reach out to us, they are in our link tree, linktr.ee/PixelPlay Podcast. You can find our Twitter, our Instagram, our Discord if you guys want to be part of the chat. Let us know what you think. Feel free to also leave us in the chats. And hey, if you got this far, it really helps us out if you guys can give a like, a subscribe. It all feeds the algorithm gods that we are not smart enough to understand. Thank you guys so much. We really appreciate it, and we will see you guys next week.